She was the kind of woman who noticed everything and said nothing until it mattered. An old woman walks into a precinct with nothing but her memories and a name the town tried to bury. What happens next forces everyone in that room to question everything they thought they knew. Let us know in the comments section below where you're watching from today. Kaylen Crawford did not ask for help when she walked into the station. She did not hesitate. She did not knock. She walked through the front doors like she owned the place, like the creaking in her knees was the rhythm of something that had been waiting 3 decades to be heard. Sergeant Alondra Ruiz noticed her first, eyes flicking up from her desk as the slow, deliberate tapping of a cane echoed across the floor. 1 step. Tap. Another tap. The old woman was small, wrapped in a long gray coat that brushed the tops of her orthopedic shoes, her hair pulled into a low bun, as if the walk to this building was just another morning routine. No one moved. No one ever expected someone like her to come in through those doors. Alondra cleared her throat. "Ma'am, can I help you?" Kaylen tilted her head slightly, not toward the voice, but toward the left corner of the room, where the vending machine hummed. She smiled. "I need to speak to whoever's in charge of that case y'all gave up on 30 years ago. The one with the blood on the porch and the neighbor who disappeared." Detective Caleb Monroe leaned back in his chair without looking up from his coffee. "Ma'am, this is a police department. We don't have a walk-in lane for ghost stories." Kaylen turned toward his voice. "You think I came in here to tell a ghost story?" Now he looked up. Alondra stepped around the desk. "What case are you referring to, ma'am?" "The Carson house, 1995, summer. Boy named Reggie disappeared. You said it was drugs. His mama said it was God punishing them. I say you're all wrong." Something shifted in the room. Hal Spencer, sitting in the back near the booking desk, froze mid-chew on a stale donut. That case hadn't come up in years. Reggie Carson was just another black boy lost in the system, another cold file in the cabinet nobody touched anymore. Caleb set down his mug. Case was ruled inconclusive. There was no body, no weapon, no motive. Kaylen smiled again. This time her mouth pulled upward just a little too slowly. "And yet I have a motive, a weapon, and a name. But I'll need a room that ain't filled with men who think I'm here to waste time." Alondra opened the side door to interview room 2. Without another word, Kaylen walked through it, tapping her cane along the wall like she was counting bricks. Inside she sat down, folding her hands in her lap. Caleb followed. Hal trailed behind, but Alondra cut him off at the door. "She asked for people who aren't here to waste time." Hal scoffed, chewing louder. Inside the room, Kaylen waited for Caleb to sit. "I don't need to see your face," she said, "but I need to know you're listening. I've waited 30 years for this." Caleb flipped open a notebook. "Go ahead." "I lived next door to the Carsons," Kaylen began. "I was already blind when it happened. Not from birth, but close enough. My hearing's been sharp ever since. That summer, I heard things I wasn't supposed to. Doors opening when they shouldn't, voices late at night. Reggie arguing with someone 2 nights before he vanished. I didn't know who at the time. I know now." Caleb narrowed his eyes. "Why now?" "Because the man I heard that night came back last week. Same voice, same cough, same damn cologne. I was standing in line at the post office and he was behind me, talking about an old property being put back on the market." Caleb glanced down at the file he'd barely skimmed 10 years ago. No leads, Reggie's mother dead, witnesses all dried up. "What's his name?" Kaylen's voice was low. "Elias Ward?" Caleb blinked. Elias was an ex-con who had just been released and returned to the same neighborhood. "You're sure?" "I may not have eyes," Kaylen said, "but I got memory. Sound, smell, rhythm. People forget how loud guilt is when it's trying to stay quiet." Caleb swallowed hard. Do you have evidence? I got cassette tapes, old ones. Reggie used to bring them to me. We'd listen together. He was trying to catch Elias stealing from his mum. Said he thought the man was bad news. That's why Elias got rid of him. Caleb sat back. You brought those tapes? In my coat pocket. She slid a small canvas pouch across the table. Inside were 3 labeled cassettes, each one tagged with a date and time. Caleb turned one over in his hand, then looked back at her. You really think these are going to change anything? Kaylen leaned forward, her milky eyes staring straight through him. I don't think. I know. And in that moment, Caleb knew this wasn't just an old woman on a mission. This was justice, tired, patient, and unstoppable. She had already waited 30 years. And now, time had run out. The cassette player clicked once, then the hiss of blank space filled the small interview room like a breath held too long. Caleb sat forward, elbows on the table, eyes fixed on the cheap plastic speaker in front of him. The sound that came next was faint, distant, like time itself was trying to crawl through a speaker half its age. Mama said not to trust him, but he keeps coming around, saying he's going to help fix the porch. He don't even bring tools. Reggie's voice. Young, maybe 14. Confident, but with a fear in it. A fear that couldn't quite speak its own name. Kaylen didn't smile this time. She sat silently, one hand on the edge of the table, the other curled over the handle of her cane like a prayer she'd been reciting for years. You can hear the TV in the background, she whispered, her voice barely louder than the tape. We always watched game shows after dinner. That's how I remember it was early evening, right after Wheel of Fortune. The tape continued. I caught him again. In the shed. I think he's taken stuff, but I can't prove it yet. He smells like smoke and beer. Always wears that same coat, the one with the tear at the sleeve. Caleb looked over at Kaylen. How'd he get into the shed? It wasn't locked back then, she answered. No one thought you needed to lock things in that part of town. Reggie was trying to be a man. He thought if he caught Elias stealing, his mama would finally believe him. He scribbled a note. This puts Elia at the scene, but it's still circumstantial. Keep listening, she said. The tape warbled slightly, then a loud bang, a door slamming shut. Hey, what are you doing in there? Reggie's voice, louder now. A second voice, muffled, rough. You don't talk to me like that, boy. Then shuffling. Movement. Reggie's voice again, this time shaken. Tell my mama. Long silence. Then the click of the recorder stopping. Caleb sat back. That's it? Kaylen nodded. That was 2 days before he vanished. He tapped the pen against his notebook. You said there were 3 tapes. She pulled the second one from her coat, placed it beside the first. This one's harder to hear. I left the window cracked that night. You'll hear voices through it. He inserted the tape. Pressed play. Again the hiss, again time holding its breath. Then an argument. Low, vicious. Elias's voice unmistakable. You think I won't? You think you can run your mouth and not pay for it? I didn't say nothing. You a liar, and you don't know how small this town is. Ain't nowhere to hide. Reggie again, his words scrambled with wind and the crackle of a cheap microphone. Caleb leaned closer, straining. Then a crash. A sharp, metallic sound like a shovel falling. Then the sound of something dragging, something heavy. The tape clicked off. Caleb looked up slowly. You recorded this through your window? Third house down, she said softly. Backyard face theirs. I never told nobody what I heard. Thought they'd say I was just a lonely old woman who couldn't even see. Why didn't you tell the police then? She tilted her head. Because Elias left town the same week. And because I had a feeling he'd come back. You can't watch someone like that disappear and not know they'll circle back someday. I was waiting for him. Caleb rubbed his jaw, staring at the notes on the table. We still need physical evidence. There's a third tape. Kaylen reached into the pouch and slid it forward. This one, she said. He recorded without knowing it. Caleb's brow furrowed. I gave Reggie the recorder to keep on him. Told him to turn it on when he felt nervous. That way, if something happened, someone would hear it. He inserted the tape. Static. Wind. Then footsteps. Fast. Breathing. Hard. Reggie's voice panicked. He's got a... Then a thud. Then silence. For a full 15 seconds, there was nothing. Then Elias's voice, closer now, angry. You brought this on yourself, always snooping. You thought I wouldn't find out? A grunt, something dragged. Creaking hinge. Then water. Splashing. A final thump. Then nothing. Caleb stopped the tape. He stared at the player like it might start speaking again. His mouth hung slightly open, but no words came out. Kaylen exhaled slowly. He dumped him. Somewhere wet. A well, a pipe, a creek maybe. That's what I've always believed. Caleb stood up, walked in a slow circle, one hand over his mouth. This is enough for a search warrant, maybe even a formal interview. Why didn't you bring this in sooner? I had to wait till he came back. You think anyone would have believed a blind woman with some old tapes when the suspect was halfway across the country? I needed him close, needed him here. He turned toward her, eyes wide. You planned this? I endured this, she said, so the truth could come out the moment it mattered. A pause stretched between them. Then Caleb gathered the tapes and carefully placed them in a bag. You'll need to stay nearby in case we have more questions. She nodded. I ain't going nowhere. Not till he's in cuffs. Caleb opened the door. Alondra was waiting. Get a search team ready, he said, and find Elias Ward. Alondra raised a brow. You serious? He looked back into the room where Kaylen sat, still and silent. Is a heart attack. And outside, for the first time in 30 years, the air didn't feel so heavy anymore. Elias Ward lived in a house that looked like it hadn't made peace with the present. The siding peeled like a sunburn, and the porch sagged slightly to the left, just enough to make you think twice about stepping on it. Out back, weeds clawed through what used to be a garden, and a half-crushed lawn chair sat tilted in the dirt like a drunk that never got up. Detective Caleb Monroe stood at the edge of the property with 2 uniforms behind him and a warrant in hand. His jaw was tight, his breath shallow. It wasn't just the case. It was Kaylen's voice, steady and measured, playing over and over in his head like those cassette tapes. I don't need eyes to see. I just remember better than most. Elias answered the door, wearing an old tank top and cargo pants that had seen more stains than stitches. He didn't look surprised to see them, just tired. Morning, Caleb said, holding up the paper. We've got a warrant to search the premises. You can stay out of the way or come down to the station. Your choice. Elias snorted. For what? Ain't nothing here but bad plumbing and some old junk. Caleb didn't blink. We'll be the judge of that. Inside, the house smelled like damp wood and fried grease. The walls were yellowed with old smoke, and a clock ticked on the mantel with a stubborn, uneven rhythm. Elias stood with his arms crossed, jaw shifting like he was working a toothache. They started in the living room, drawers, closets, behind cushions, nothing but the expected mess of a man who lived alone and didn't care much. Then the shed out back. The lock had been replaced recently. Open it, Caleb said. Elias shrugged and pulled a key from his pocket. Be my guest. Inside the shed was dark, lit only by a shaft of light through a cracked panel in the roof. Tools lined the wall, neat, surprisingly. On the floor sat a rusted shovel and a blue tarp, folded with care. Caleb stepped in, eyes scanning. A trail of scuff marks across the floor caught his attention. He knelt. Wood planks had been shifted recently. Some dust, some dirt, not untouched. "You move these?" Elias shook his head. "Just old boards." Caleb lifted one. Underneath, hard-packed earth. But in one corner, moisture, darker soil. He stood. Get forensics. Now. Back at the station, Kaylen sat in the same room, hands folded over her cane. Naomi Carter, her grandniece, sat beside her now, young, sharp-eyed, and vibrating with nerves. "You okay, Auntie?" Kaylen nodded. "Been okay since I walked in. Now it's just patience." Naomi looked toward the mirrored wall. "They really think they'll find something?" "Mita left pieces," Kaylen said quietly. "They always do." In the hallway, Alondra and Caleb leaned against the vending machine. "He's sweating," she said. "Still claims he don't know what we're talking about, but he's dodging, keeps asking about his rights." Caleb muttered. "He's not worried about the shed. He's worried about what he forgot." An hour later, the call came through. "Detective," one of the field techs said over speaker. "We've found human remains, skeletal, wrapped in old cloth, possibly a shirt." Caleb closed his eyes. "You get DNA?" "Already in motion. There's a belt buckle, too. Matches the description from the 1995 file." Caleb walked back to interview room 2. When he opened the door, Kaylen, "I was right, wasn't I?" she asked softly. He nodded. "We found bones, clothes. We'll confirm with dental or DNA. But it's him." Naomi gasped, covering her mouth. Kaylen didn't move. "I always knew he never left that ground." Caleb hesitated. "We need you to hear something else." He stepped out, came back with a digital recorder. Pressed play. Elias's voice crackled from the new interrogation feed. "You got no case. Nobody saw me. Nobody even knows if the kid's dead." "You just confirmed it," a younger officer said in the background. "Don't twist my words," Elias snapped. "That kid was nosy, thought he could blackmail me. He thought he was smart." Then a pause. "And mean to do it. He fell. I panicked. That's it." The tape ended. Naomi turned slowly toward Kaylen, eyes wide. "He said it. He said it out loud." Kaylen didn't smile, didn't cry, just breathed, deep and steady. Caleb sat across from her again. "We'll arrest him officially once the remains are confirmed. But the confession, we got it." "I heard. You were right." "No," Kaylen said. "I was quiet for too long. Now I'm just loud, in a way you can't ignore." Outside, the day rolled on. Papers moved, officers walked. The station buzzed with the rare electricity of justice catching up with time. And in a quiet room, with peeling paint and fluorescent lights that hummed just slightly out of tune, Kaylen Crawford sat still, an old woman in a folding chair. Knowing the clock had finally turned full circle, but she wasn't done yet. The courtroom was smaller than it looked on TV. There were no dramatic gasps, no pounding gavels. Just the low rustle of paper and the buzz of old fluorescent lights. Kaylen Crawford sat in the second row, behind the prosecution, hands folded neatly over her cane. Naomi was beside her, leaning forward like the verdict was the edge of a cliff. She didn't want to fall off. Elias Ward sat at the defense table with his lawyer, shoulders hunched in a way that looked smaller than any prison cell ever could. He didn't look at Kaylen. He hadn't since the first day of the trial, not when the tapes were played, not when Reggie's old belt buckle was held up in a clear plastic bag, not even when the DNA report confirmed what the town had whispered about for 30 years. The judge's voice cut through the stillness. "We, the jury, find the defendant Elias Ward guilty of manslaughter in the first degree and tampering with evidence. A sound escaped Naomi, half breath, half sob. Kaylen only nodded. The gavel struck once. It was done. Outside the courthouse, sunlight touched the steps like something soft and new. Reporters waited, cameras already rolling, hoping for something quotable. But Kaylen didn't speak to them. She stepped slowly down the stairs, one careful foot at a time, Naomi guiding her without words. At the bottom, Kaylen Monroe was waiting, sleeves rolled, face unreadable but softer than it had been in months. He offered her his arm, and Kaylen took it. "Didn't think I'd live long enough to hear that word out loud," she said quietly. "Guilty?" "No," she replied. "Believed." He smiled at that. They walked to the bench under the courthouse oak. It was freshly sanded, no graffiti, just old wood that knew how to hold weight. "You really waited all this time," Caleb said, sitting beside her. "I waited because I had to, and because I wanted Reggie's mama to rest." Caleb looked down at his hands. "I used to think cold cases stayed cold because people didn't care. But now I think it's because some voices get turned down too low." Kaylen nodded. "You just have to know where to listen." Naomi walked over holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Kaylen. It was the kind she liked, hot, bitter, nothing fancy. "Now what?" Naomi asked, sitting on the other side. Kaylen sipped slowly before answering. "Now I go back home. Same porch, same chair, same creaky floorboard in the kitchen." "And that's enough?" Naomi asked. Kaylen smiled, the kind of smile that didn't need to show teeth. "It is when justice is sitting right next to you." Later that week, the town held a quiet memorial for Reggie Carson. There was no parade, no speeches. Just a few folding chairs in front of what was once his house, now boarded up. The paint faded and chipped. A new plaque had been placed in the yard near the broken fence. It read, "In memory of Reginald Reggie Carson, a voice lost too soon, a truth not forgotten." Naomi placed a single sunflower under it. Caleb stood with his hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the small group that gathered. No news vans, no ceremony, just neighbors, and Kaylen. Sitting quietly in her folding chair, eyes closed, her face toward the breeze like she was reading something written in the wind. Afterwards, a little girl, no more than 7, approached her. "Miss Kaylen," she said shyly, "are you really the lady who found the bad man?" Kaylen turned toward the voice. "I didn't find him, sweetheart. I just remembered him better than anyone else." The girl giggled. "My teacher says you're like a superhero." "Tell your teacher I said thank you," Kaylen smiled, "but I'm just someone who listens real hard." The girl nodded, then ran back to her mother. Naomi came over, tears still drying in the corners of her eyes. "They want to name the new library wing after you." Kaylen raised an eyebrow. "After me?" Naomi nodded. "The Crawford collection, a space for stories that need to be remembered." For the first time in a long while, Kaylen was quiet, in a different way. Not from pain or exhaustion, but from peace. Back at her house, she walked across the porch with slow grace. The wood still groaned under her steps, but it didn't complain. It sang. Naomi opened the front door, and the familiar smell of mint tea and cedar swept out to greet them. Inside, the old cassette player still sat on the bookshelf, right where it always had. Kaylen ran her fingers across it, then opened the drawer below. Tapes, all labeled in her own handwriting. Voices, moments, fragments of time. She pulled one out, one of Reggie's old ones, slipped it into the deck, pressed play. Static. Then laughter. "I got you this time, Miss Kaylen. I know that was you knocking on the floor." Her smile widened. Naomi looked over, standing in the doorway of the kitchen, dish towel in hand. "You gonna play all of them?" "Maybe not all at once," Kaylen said. "But I'll play them. Some memories need to breathe every now and then." And as the tape played on, the house didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt alive. Outside, birds gathered on the fence line. A wind picked up through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of a boy who once wanted to be heard, and the woman who made sure he finally was. Kaylen didn't need her eyes to see the world changing around her. He had always seen, more than most. And now the world at last saw her back.